Aarav, Khanna and Meera Patel seemed like the perfect newlyweds, living a life of luxury and charm, but behind their glamorous wedding in Australia hid a $50 million marriage scam, a trail of lies, and a shocking murder that would turn their dream life into a nightmare. Aarav, Khanna and Meera Patel had become the talk of Sydney's Indian community. Their wedding was more than just an event, it was a spectacle of wealth and beauty that left every guest in awe. The ceremony took place at a glass-walled resort overlooking the harbour, where chandeliers glimmered like stars and white roses covered every corner. Aarav, dressed in an ivory sherwani embroidered with gold, walked with a quiet confidence that made people assume he was a man of power. Meera, in her shimmering red bridal lehenga, smiled gracefully as photographers captured every moment of what appeared to be a perfect union. To outsiders, they were the kind of couple people envied, young, successful, and deeply in love. Yet nothing about them was real. Every guest at the wedding had been hired for the day, from the relatives who cried during the ceremony to the friends who raised champagne glasses during the reception. The entire event had been designed to build an image, a rich, respectable couple who could be trusted with money and influence. The luxury cars parked outside, the designer jewelry Meera wore, even the family photos displayed in the hall, all of it was part of a carefully crafted illusion. Behind closed doors, Aarav and Meera rarely spoke about love. Their conversations revolved around business, opportunity, and profit. To them, marriage was not a promise of companionship, it was a strategy, a way to open doors that would otherwise remain closed. The night ended with applause, laughter, and countless photos uploaded online, each one painting the same false story. For Aarav and Meera, it was not the beginning of a love story but the launch of a $1 million deception that would soon spiral out of control. Aarav Khanna had built his image with precision long before the wedding. He claimed to be the founder of a booming tech company called InnovateX Global, boasting clients from Dubai to Singapore. His social media pages displayed private jets, luxury offices, and glowing press releases that he had written himself. In reality, InnovateX existed only on paper, a shell company registered under multiple fake addresses. Aarav's confidence and charm made people believe every word he said. He knew how to talk numbers, drop business jargon, and dress the part. It was enough to make anyone trust him. Meera Patel, on the other hand, had mastered the art of storytelling. She told people she was the only daughter of an Indian textile tycoon, educated in London, and now managing her family's international expansion. In truth, she had once worked as a travel agent in Pune, struggling to pay rent before she met Aarav online. Their partnership formed out of shared ambition and greed. Meera provided sophistication, charm, and credibility, while Aarav handled the operations and schemes. Together, they plotted a future built on lies and calculated manipulation. They studied how wealthy Indian investors looked for safe opportunities abroad and decided to become the bridge those investors could trust. Their plan was to create fake real estate projects in Australia and lure high-profile clients with promises of quick profits and legal residency. Every detail was planned: the fake company website, fabricated property documents, and staged meetings with builders who were actually paid actors. The two practiced their stories until they sounded natural, convincing even to themselves. To the outside world, they looked unstoppable. But underneath the luxury and confidence, their alliance was fragile, powered only by deceit and the hunger for more. The launch of Khanna Global Estates marked the beginning of their grand deception. Aarav and Meera rented a modern office in downtown Sydney, decorated with sleek furniture and framed architectural designs of imaginary buildings. They hired a graphic designer to create glossy brochures showing luxury apartments overlooking the ocean and villas surrounded by palm trees. Every image was stolen from the internet but carefully edited to look like part of their upcoming projects. Aarav took charge of presentations, confidently explaining how foreign investors could earn triple returns within a year. Meera played the role of the polished businesswoman, attending meetings in designer suits, speaking softly but with authority, earning instant respect. Together, they created a dream so convincing that people barely questioned it. Their first few investors came from India and Dubai, wealthy businessmen looking for a way to expand abroad. Aarav used his charm to gain their trust, inviting them to exclusive parties and showing fake progress reports filled with technical jargon. Meera added emotional appeal, talking about shared Indian pride and the vision of creating a global legacy. The money began to flow in faster than they imagined. Within months, their accounts showed deposits adding up to more than $50 million. They spent freely, buying luxury cars, diamonds, and penthouse suites, all while promising investors that construction was underway. To keep up appearances, they even rented an empty piece of land and set up a fake construction site with a few workers and machinery for photographs. Every layer of the scam made it more believable. But as their empire grew, so did their arrogance. Aarav believed they were untouchable, while Meera quietly began to sense that the bigger the lie became, the closer they were to being caught. Despite their outward success, cracks were beginning to appear in Aarav and Meera's carefully constructed world. One of their earliest investors, a retired banker from Melbourne named Ramesh Chauhan, had started noticing inconsistencies in the monthly reports he received. The construction progress photos looked almost identical from month to month, and the promised timelines for project milestones kept slipping without explanation. Quietly, he began asking questions and running background checks on Aarav's company. This small seed of suspicion would soon grow into a major problem for the couple. Meanwhile, Meera was growing increasingly anxious. She had always been the more cautious of the two, and Aarav's impulsive spending habits and arrogance worried her. She realized that if authorities began investigating, their entire fortune could disappear overnight. To protect herself, she secretly created an offshore account in Mauritius and began transferring small amounts of money under false names. In addition, she gathered evidence of their scams, financial documents, emails, and fake contracts, and stored them in a hidden locker in Sydney. This folder was her safety net, a way to ensure she could disappear with a portion of their wealth if Aarav ever turned against her. The tension between them grew, though neither showed it publicly. To outsiders, they remained the perfect couple, charming, confident, and in love. Behind closed doors, however, arguments were frequent and quiet threats hung in the air. Aarav's obsession with controlling the operation clashed with Meera's desire to protect herself. Both were aware of the risk that their empire could collapse at any moment, yet they continued to live extravagantly, flaunting wealth they hadn't earned. The more attention their scam attracted, the more precarious their situation became, and the more dangerous the gap between trust and betrayal in their relationship would prove to be. By the time Aarav suggested a second, smaller wedding ceremony, tension between him and Meera had reached a boiling point. He framed it as a renewal of vows, a way to reassure investors and maintain their public image. The ceremony was set at a luxury hotel in the Blue Mountains, far from prying eyes but still glamorous enough to impress anyone watching from afar. Aarav insisted on inviting only a handful of guests, trusted associates and a few business partners, so that the event would appear intimate and genuine. To him, it was a calculated move to calm suspicions and project stability. Meera, however, had her own plan. She had grown wary of Aarav's controlling nature and feared that the increasing scrutiny from investors would eventually trap her in a dangerous situation. Secretly, she had arranged for a private car to take her to Sydney Airport immediately after the ceremony and had already booked a flight to Singapore under a false identity. Her plan was simple: leave Aarav behind, take her offshore account money, and disappear without a trace. She believed this would finally free her from the web of lies they had both spun so meticulously. What neither of them realized was that Aarav had discovered her secret. While Meera thought she was carefully covering her tracks, Aarav had intercepted an email confirming her plan to flee with part of the stolen fortune. The discovery ignited a dangerous mix of anger and paranoia. That night, as the couple went through the motions of their second wedding ceremony, a silent battle of intentions unfolded behind closed doors. Both were hiding critical secrets, each aware of the other's potential betrayal, yet outwardly playing the roles of perfect newlyweds. The night that was meant to solidify their image would instead become the turning point, setting the stage for a shocking and fatal confrontation. The morning after the so-called renewal of vows, the luxury hotel in the Blue Mountains was unusually quiet. Staff noticed that Aarav had checked out before sunrise, leaving behind only a hastily packed bag and a vague explanation about a sudden business meeting in Sydney. Meera's suite, however, remained locked, and when housekeeping attempted to enter, there was no answer. Eventually, the hotel manager and security staff forced the door open, revealing a scene that immediately set off alarms. The room was in disarray, a broken vase lay on the floor, the bed was unmade, and a blood-stained pillowcase rested near the bedside table. A luxury suitcase that had been packed the night before was missing, as were Meera's phone, passport, and handbag. Aarav's calm demeanor when questioned by hotel staff only heightened suspicion. He insisted that Meera had left early to visit relatives in India, but staff noted that her flight ticket had never been used, and there were no records of her leaving the country. Investigators quickly realized that something far more sinister had occurred. Forensic teams began combing the suite for evidence, examining fingerprints, DNA traces, and signs of struggle. CCTV footage from the hotel revealed Aarav leaving the suite alone in the early hours, pushing a large, suspiciously heavy suitcase, and returning 2 hours later with nothing in his hands. The combination of missing items, physical evidence, and Aarav's suspicious behavior immediately turned the case into a criminal investigation. Authorities suspected foul play, and the hotel became a sealed crime scene. What had started as a lavish wedding celebration had now transformed into a chilling mystery. Meera Patel, the woman who had once seemed untouchable in her wealth and charm, had vanished without a trace. The question hanging over everyone involved was terrifyingly simple: had she run away as planned, or had something far worse happened during that night of secret and lies? 2 weeks after Meera Patel's sudden disappearance, the case took a horrifying turn. Hikers in a remote section of the Blue Mountains stumbled upon a large, partially buried suitcase wedged between rocks and thick undergrowth. Curious and cautious, they called local authorities, who arrived to uncover a grim discovery. Inside was Meera's body, wrapped in her wedding dress, partially decomposed. Forensic tests quickly confirmed her identity. The discovery shocked the public and intensified the investigation into Aarav Khanna, who had been under quiet surveillance since the hotel incident. Authorities immediately reviewed the hotel's security footage, and what they found was chilling. Aarav was seen leaving the suite in the early hours of the morning, pushing a suitcase that appeared unusually heavy. He returned alone roughly 2 hours later, his shirt damp with sweat, his expression tense. Hotel staff noted his odd behavior. He requested extra towels and seemed unusually anxious, a stark contrast to the composed persona he had always maintained. Investigators began reconstructing the timeline, piecing together the moments before and after the wedding night ceremony. Each frame of footage, every witness account, and each trace of physical evidence pointed to a horrifying conclusion: Aarav had been the last person seen with Meera before her death. The gruesome discovery transformed what had been a high-profile fraud investigation into a murder case. Police intensified their search for additional evidence, examining Aarav's penthouse, digital records, and financial transactions. It became clear that Meera's death was no accident. The question shifted from whether she had left of her own volition to how Aarav had managed to kill her, transport her body, and attempt to conceal the crime in a remote, isolated location. The luxury, charm, and illusion of Aarav and Meera's life were now completely stripped away, revealing a chilling story of greed, deception, and murder that stunned Australia and the world. During the investigation into Meera Patel's murder, police executed a thorough search of Aarav Khanna's Sydney penthouse. What they found went far beyond expectations. Hidden in a concealed drawer behind a false wall were several encrypted hard drives and stacks of financial documents, contracts, invoices, and emails, all meticulously detailing the couple's extensive network of scams. Each folder revealed a carefully orchestrated deception, showing how Aarav and Meera had manipulated investors, forged property documents, and laundered money through multiple offshore accounts. But the most shocking discovery was a folder labeled simply "Backup." Inside the folder were photographs and messages that completely altered the direction of the investigation. They showed Meera meeting secretly with Ramesh Chauhan, one of the early investors who had grown suspicious of Aarav's operation. The photos were recent, taken just weeks before the wedding, and clearly indicated that Meera had been planning her own escape. Documents in the folder suggested that she intended to expose Aarav's scams while taking a portion of the stolen $50 million for herself, possibly in collaboration with Ramesh. It was a revelation that added a new layer of complexity. The victim had also been a conspirator in her own right. Investigators realized that the murder had been the tragic result of escalating betrayals. Meera had meticulously planned to disappear, but Aarav discovered her secret just before or during the second wedding ceremony. The evidence suggested that in a fit of anger and desperation, Aarav killed her to prevent her from escaping with both the money and proof of their crimes. The hidden folder confirmed the dangerous mixture of greed, mistrust, and duplicity that had defined their relationship. What had begun as a lavish, picture-perfect marriage now appeared as a calculated battle of survival, betrayal, and murder, with Meera's own plans ultimately leading to her untimely death. Aarav Khanna's arrest marked the beginning of one of the most sensational trials in recent Australian history. Caught at Melbourne Airport attempting to flee the country with a forged passport under a false name, Aarav was immediately taken into custody. From the outset, the prosecution painted a chilling picture of a man driven by greed, manipulation, and cold calculation. The courtroom was filled with investors, journalists, and the few acquaintances who had been unwittingly involved in his schemes, all eager to hear the details of a case that had shocked the nation. During the trial, evidence was presented in painstaking detail. CCTV footage from the hotel showed Aarav leaving Meera's suite with a heavy suitcase in the early hours, returning alone hours later. Forensic experts testified about the blood-stained pillowcases and other traces of violence found in the suite. Digital evidence revealed Aarav's search history, including phrases such as, "how to bury a body in Australia," and "time for body decomposition," demonstrating premeditation. Investigators also detailed the couple's elaborate scams, the forged property contracts, and the millions of dollars siphoned into offshore accounts. The prosecution further revealed the hidden folder found in Aarav's penthouse, showing that Meera had been planning to betray him with Ramesh Chauhan, one of the early investors. The folder included photographs and messages proving her intent to expose Aarav and abscond with part of the stolen money. This revelation provided a motive. Aarav, feeling cornered and betrayed, had acted in desperation to prevent Meera from escaping with both the fortune and proof of their crimes. Despite Aarav's claims of innocence and his insistence that Meera had staged her own death, the overwhelming evidence left little room for doubt. The jury found him guilty of murder, fraud, and multiple counts of financial deception. Aarav Khanna was sentenced to life in prison without parole, his empire of lies and luxury collapsing entirely, leaving behind a trail of betrayal, death, and millions of dollars in lost fortunes. Months after Aarav Khanna's conviction, the fallout from the scandal continued to unfold, revealing just how far-reaching the deception had been. Investigators traced portions of the stolen $50 million to a network of offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, Singapore, and the Isle of Man. Some of the funds were linked to names associated with Meera's secret communications, including Ramesh Chauhan, suggesting that part of the fortune had already been claimed by her accomplice. Despite international cooperation, a significant portion of the money remained untraceable, leaving authorities and investors frustrated and uncertain about whether the stolen funds would ever be recovered. For the investors, the scandal was devastating. Many had poured life savings into what they believed was a legitimate opportunity abroad. The realization that the glamorous couple they had trusted was, in reality, orchestrating one of the most audacious scams in recent memory left them shaken. Lawsuits, legal claims, and civil investigations dragged on for months, as victims tried to recover what little they could. News outlets across Australia and India covered the story relentlessly, highlighting the dramatic contrast between the couple's luxurious public image and the criminal reality behind it. Even in prison, Aarav's life was a shadow of the man he once portrayed. Friends and associates abandoned him, and his lavish lifestyle evaporated entirely. Meanwhile, Meera's secret accomplice, Ramesh Chauhan, disappeared without a trace, and the full extent of their conspiracy may never be fully known. The story of Aarav and Meera became a cautionary tale, a chilling reminder of how ambition and greed can spiral into betrayal and murder. What began as a glamorous, envy-inducing marriage ended in tragedy, leaving behind shattered lives, a trail of lost fortunes, and a chilling narrative of deceit that would remain infamous in Australia's true crime history.